Hey guys, Bingocat here. So I kind of got a few updates involving my channel, but I'm going to wait until the end of the video to talk about that. So today's video, can you use Windows 98 today? Now I made a video all the way back in 2014 actually, but if you go and look at the video, I posted it in 2015. It's like using Windows 98 in 2014 with modern programs and internet, and it's not like my other can you use blank operating systems today videos. It was just me just sort of trying to view websites in Internet Explorer, and that's about it. I didn't really go over Windows 98 or anything like that, unlike all my other operating systems videos basically, and people have been requesting that I redo that video forever, and I decided I want to start doing more operating system videos on my channel again. So yeah, today we're going to go ahead and take a look at Windows 98. So if you try and run Windows 98 on modern hardware, like let's say I went and bought a PC with an Intel Coffee Lake processor, 16 gigabytes of RAM, and an SSD, could you install Windows 98 on that? And the answer is no, that's not possible. Heck, I have a 2003 Dell Inspiron 8500 laptop, and I tried to install Windows 98 on that, and it installed, but there's no drivers available for it because even like 5 years after Windows 98 came out, basically no new computers were supporting Windows 98. So I'm not going to say it's impossible, but it would be very tricky to run this operating system today on modern hardware. Very quick backstory regarding Windows 98. The Windows 9X line of operating systems, so that would be Windows 95, Windows 98, and Windows Me, were actually based off of Microsoft DOS. And so they weren't like Windows NT or Windows 2000, which were based on a totally different operating system kernel. So the Win 9X line was based at consumers, where like Windows NT 4.0 and Windows 2000 were based at businesses, and Microsoft converged both the Win 9X line and the Win NT line with Windows XP, and nowadays they only use the kernel they used for the Windows NT operating systems in Windows. So yeah, Windows 98 had two major releases, one in 1998, and then there was Windows 98 Second Edition in 1999, and Microsoft supported Windows 98 all the way up until 2006. So the system requirements for Windows 98 are an Intel 80486DX2 66 MHz or compatible CPU with a math coprocessor, and a Pentium processor was recommended. At least 16 megabytes of RAM, although 24 megabytes was the recommended. At least 500 megabytes of disk space. You also needed a VGA or higher resolution monitor, so that is 640 by 480. You also needed a CD-ROM or DVD-ROM drive or a floppy disk drive in order to install the operating system. And last but not least, you need a Microsoft mouse or a compatible pointing device. Also, fun fact, Windows 98 is not designed to handle more than 1 gigabyte of RAM without changes, so if you have like 1.5 gigabytes of RAM inside your computer, Windows 98, chances are it probably won't work. So yeah, let's go ahead and turn on Windows 98. I got it running in a VMware workstation here. Should boot up really quickly because it's VMware. And today we shouldn't have to enter in a super secret passcode because there isn't a passcode on this virtual machine. Alright, it has my name, but there's no super secret passcode. And here's a Windows 98 desktop. Let's see if we can change the resolution to 1920 by 1080. We can go 1920 by 1440, but no 1920 by 1080 it looks like. So the Windows 98 desktop, for those of you who have never seen it, it actually looks pretty similar to the Windows 10 desktop. You know, you just have icons on a desktop, you have your system tray down here in the bottom right hand corner, and you have a button for your start menu. So if we were to take a look around Windows 98, let's go ahead and take a look at the properties and some of the backgrounds. This is the default background. It's sort of a turquoise background, but if you want to stretch the pictures, most of these are just patterns of some type, like a straw mat. I kind of liked, I have to enable the active desktop. Okay, the regular Windows 98 wallpaper looks alright. It looks nothing special though. In fact, most of these backgrounds look, to be honest, pretty bad. So if we go and take a look at screensavers that came with the operating system. Now, some of you may have never actually seen screensavers because screensavers aren't enabled by default on computers anymore, and they aren't really necessary on most computers anyway. Screensavers were invented because in the days where people had big bulky CRT monitors, there was a problem called burn-in. So if you let the same static image sit on your screen 24/7, chances are there could be something called burn-in on your monitor where the image would sort of be permanently burned into place. Like every time you turned on your monitor, for example, you might always see the Internet Explorer icon sitting there, and that would kind of suck. So in order to mitigate this problem, PC manufacturers and OS manufacturers put screensavers in their operating systems. Now, I think the most well-known Windows 98 screensaver, if I can find it, is the 3D Maze. I remember back in like first grade, this was the screensaver on some of the computers at my school, and this was the screensaver my mom had on her computer. And I used to just like to sit here and watch the maze. I thought that was pretty cool. And some other screensavers that were included, like I always liked the 3D Pipes screensaver. I always thought that was pretty neat. Alright, so something that I like about Windows 98, it's strange how Windows 98 is almost 20 years old, and it's in a way almost more customizable than Windows 10. Like, look at all this stuff that you can change the colors for. You can change colors for 3D objects, like let's say I wanted to change this to green, for example. Oh look, this is all green. And then active title bar you can change to whatever color you want. You can make it whatever size you want. So now it's size 26. Message box, you can change it from black to the text from black to white, for example. Change it back to black. Then you can change colors of the tooltips. The window. It's strange. It's really strange how Windows 98 is 20 years old. You essentially get more color customization choices than you do with Windows 10. Isn't that strange? And of course, Microsoft also includes themes like Eggplant, which, yeah, that looks awful. Now, it also includes a high contrast theme, so for those of you who like dark themes, there you go. That's basically as dark as it gets. Then there's also like a marine color, and then for the most part, I just prefer the Windows Standard scheme. Now, you had a choice between 16 colors, True Color, aka 32-bit, and 256 colors. Now, I'm using 32-bit color, but if we changed it to 256 colors, yeah, you can tell everything just looks totally fake with 256 colors. Look at the IE icon. So we're gonna go ahead and change it back to True Color. You know, before though, I could have sworn I had it widescreen, and it's not letting me do widescreen. Whatever, we'll just live with a 4:3 aspect ratio like it's still 2001. So let's go ahead and take a look at the start menu. I don't know why all these blank programs are opening. Alright, so let's take a look at the start menu. All this stuff here, Windows 98 as it is in my VM, it's patched all the way up till the last patches Microsoft issued in 2006. So it should have the latest versions of each program, I guess, that came with Windows 98. So if we go under accessories, communication, it's just your internet connection wizard. This was mainly used for connecting you to either broadband or dial-up, but you know, I have fiber internet in real life, so I don't need to go through this. Alright, under entertainment, we got a CD player. Now it has Windows Media Player 9, And I will say, Microsoft actually did a pretty good job at supporting Windows 98 with new features and programs for a while, because even though Windows 2000, Me, and XP are all newer than Windows 98, Windows 98 still got support for like new versions of Windows Media Player. Windows 98 also supported Office XP. It got the latest version of Internet Explorer when XP was released. Windows 98 also got upgraded to DirectX 9, so that was pretty cool. It made Windows 98 a pretty viable operating system for quite a long time, so I think that's pretty neat. Now, games it comes with, it only comes with Free Sol, Hearts, Minesweeper, and Solitaire. They're all pretty much what you expect, like if I were to open Minesweeper, for example. Now, obviously, on a monitor my size, this window looks pretty small, but of course it's playable. Let's go ahead and try and play Mines. Dang it. Now, Internet Tools, you could set up a personal web server, apparently. On System Tools, now, Windows 98 technically wasn't supposed to be used in a corporate environment, but it was anyways because, yeah. Like, for example, my elementary school that I went to, the first year that I was there, it had entirely Windows 98 computers. They installed something called Novell on there. I forget the full name of it, but at the login screen, you had to log into the Novell client or something like that. And once you booted to the desktop, it brought up a window with a list of programs you were allowed to use. I believe the reason my school did this is because Microsoft did not introduce Active Directory until Windows 2000 and Server 2000, so before then, a lot of companies just used services like Novell. For those of you who don't know, by the way, Active Directory is basically, what you'll do with Active Directory is you'll set up a server and you'll configure a bunch of computers to communicate with the server, and what the Active Directory will do is it will keep a list of computers and accounts in what they call domain, and the Active Directory will allow you to log in to pretty much any computer that's connected to that domain with your own user credentials. There's all sorts of system tools here like drive space, drive converter. Does have clipboard viewer. I kind of wish they still included this with Windows. It just allowed you to view what was on your clipboard. This is something that I think I typed a while back accidentally in Windows 98 instead of in Discord. But Windows 98 also includes an address book, calculator, imaging. I don't really know what that is. Imaging for Windows. It doesn't really say what it is. Maybe it's a digital camera application. I can't imagine this being a scanning application, or maybe it is. Maybe if I had a picture, which I don't. Okay, we can go ahead and just create a sample picture using the Windows 98 version of MS Paint. So I'm just gonna do world's worst bee for Bingocat. Let's go ahead and save changes to untitled in the documents folder. And now let's go ahead and use the imaging application to... I thought I saved it in the documents folder, didn't I? Oh, you know what? I think I didn't save it as like a JPEG or something. But I only see bitmap. Could you not save as a JPEG in Windows 98? Now you can create a new document though, so I guess we can create a TIFF document, but we can also do a bitmap image. Now you can write on it and draw shapes on it and stuff like that. Alright, of course you got Notepad, which, you know, is pretty much the same in Windows 98 as it is in Windows 10. Then you got Synchronize. I don't know what that is. To ensure that you have the most current data when working offline, you can have Windows synchronize the data on your computer and the data on your network so that both of you are up to date. Oh, so that just synchronizes like web folders and stuff like that. You also got WordPad. So if you didn't have Microsoft Office back in the 90s, or there was something else called Microsoft Works, you could use WordPad. And so WordPad really was not anything advanced. It still isn't anything advanced. And so, like, let's say I typed in test, at least I can save this as a .doc file. So if someone sent you a .doc file, at least you would have a way to open it. So you also get Internet Explorer. So the version of IE on here, and looks like this page cannot be displayed, is Internet Explorer 6, which, you know, is really, really outdated now. But so let's just try and go to some modern websites. Nope, can't get to Google, but that's not really shocking. Reddit. What about something super simple, like Craigslist? Okay, well, at least brought me to Bing, and Bing apparently still works in Internet Explorer 6. Now, since Windows 98 was based on MS-DOS, you have an option to actually use DOS. Believe it or not, the command line that's found in modern versions of Windows was heavily based on MS-DOS. That's why a lot of the commands you use in the command line in Windows 10, Windows 8, and Windows 7 are the same commands that were used in Microsoft DOS. Nowadays, Microsoft would prefer that you use PowerShell over the command prompt in Windows 10, but a lot of people, myself included, still use the command prompt. So it also comes with Windows Explorer, so if we go to Windows Explorer, looks a little bit different from Windows Explorer, aka File Explorer, and Windows 10, but the main thing that I kind of want to point out is that it looks really, 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 really similar to Internet Explorer in Windows 98. Now, one thing that I always found pretty cool about Windows 98, in Windows Explorer, if I were to type in bing.com, Windows Explorer just turns into Internet Explorer. And if I were to type in C, Internet Explorer turns into Windows Explorer. And I always thought that was pretty neat. I liked the overall layout of File Explorer in Windows 98. I think the Windows 10 one is simpler to use, but the Windows 98 one was pretty simple to use too. Now, I do have Kernel X on here, but unfortunately I wasn't able to get any super new programs running, and Kernel X hasn't been updated since 2013, so if you do decide to use Kernel X with Windows 98, use it at your own risk. I mainly just wanted to use Kernel X to get a more modern browser running on Windows 98, but my efforts failed. So the most modern browser that will support Windows 98 natively is actually Opera, but it is nowhere near the latest version of Opera. You see this looks nothing like the latest version of Opera. It's version 10.63, and it was released in 2010. And you know, it's strange. Opera made their newest browsers available for Windows 95 and 98 and me all the way up until 2010. I have no idea why, really, because all three of those operating systems had been unsupported for years at that point, and every single other major web browser that I know of had dropped support for the Win9X line entirely, so why Opera decided to keep supporting Windows 98 is kind of a mystery to me, but that's not necessarily a bad thing. However, you can't call this version of Opera that I just had open modern anymore, because the last version was released 8 years ago. Now, Windows updates, when I try to access Windows updates, it just brings me into this loop and I can't access Windows updates. Now, the Windows 98 start menu also has a favorites folder where you can view your Internet Explorer favorites, so that's pretty cool. Also, you got links to your documents. Now, various settings, you could access a control panel, printer, taskbar, folder options, active desktop. So let's go to the control panel. You can add new hardware here. You can go to add or remove programs. So this is where, you can remove programs if you want. You could also add and remove optional Windows features like desktop themes. You can also create a Windows 98 startup disk, so that's pretty neat. And so you can change date and time, desktop themes, display, fonts, all sorts of stuff. Now, gaming options. Here's where you can configure game controllers. Then you can configure your internet options. And then there's also passwords, so you can change your Windows password. Then you also do have power management settings. Right now I just have it on home/office desk, so turn off monitor and hard disk. And then of course there's all sorts of other settings. Then you also got a find button, so you can find files or search your whole computer. You can also search the internet, which is pretty neat. However, the Internet Explorer 6 search companion is no longer supported, but you can go to Bing, and Bing for whatever reason still works in Internet Explorer 6. Now, something interesting is that there's actually no task manager in Windows 98. You could get to a place where you could close various programs, but there's no full-fledged task manager. Now, you did have a system monitor though. Like I could go here, open system monitor, and you could see your processor usage. So as far as using Windows 98 today goes, by the way, I mean, I guess it's technically possible, but I will say a few things. Number one, you can't install Windows 98 on modern hardware. I mean, I don't know, maybe someone created a guide on how to do it, but for the most part, there's no way you're gonna get Windows 98 running on modern hardware, even on hardware from like 2003. Number two, basically almost no modern applications support Windows 98. Like for example, the newest supported web browser on Windows 98 is still from 8 years ago. That's a pretty long time ago in the tech world. Number three, kernel X does exist, and it's supposed to allow you to run Windows 2000 and XP applications in Windows 98, but the last release for kernel X was 5 years ago, so chances are a lot of modern applications probably won't work with kernel X. And a lot of software vendors and developers are dropping support for Windows 2000 and XP anyways, so good luck trying to find new applications to actually run on Windows 98. Now, of course, you can use old applications, but sometimes using old applications isn't exactly that great. Like, they might be missing a lot of the features that modern applications might have, and also they won't get any security updates. Now, if you don't really care about having the latest features, you're fine with all the features that the older applications provided. You technically can use Windows 98 in 2018. Like, you could go and find a late 90s computer someone has given away, and you can set up the Windows 98 computer and use it, but I really don't recommend it. Windows 98 is pretty much obsolete at this point in time. It's pretty much a vintage operating system now. Now, I would actually like to buy a Windows 98 computer just for like nostalgia, and also so I could do some retro gaming on. So Windows 98, I mean, it is 20 years old. It's pretty much obsolete, but it was definitely a very interesting operating system. And although I don't recommend using it today, if you have an old Windows 98 computer, or heck, you want to get one for retro gaming, go for it. I mean, keeping around a Windows 98 computer won't be useful for pretty much any practical task nowadays, but it's fun to have Windows 98 around for like nostalgia or retro gaming. So let's go ahead and shut down Windows 98. And once again, it should be pretty fast because it's VMware. Alright guys, so the channel updates I wanted to give is that I basically want to start doing more videos about operating systems and software. Again, I've sort of switched to doing videos about hardware for a little while, and I've also been streaming quite a bit for a little while, but I kind of want to go back to making more videos about operating systems and various software, because it seems like that's what you guys like the best. It seems like that is what most of you come to my channel for, and I want to make content that you guys like. So in the future, expect more videos regarding operating systems and software. So thank you guys for watching this video. Make sure to like this video if you liked it, subscribe if you haven't done so already. Please click the bell icon so you can be notified of my future video uploads, because the YouTube algorithm really sucks at showing people videos sometimes. And please check me out on my social media, link down below in the description. I have Twitter, Instagram, Discord, and Twitch, and probably more eventually. And goodbye.